These look like printer cartridges, but they are not. They are explosive devices. These printer cartridges have been taken apart and packed with bombs. They contain the explosive pentaerythritol tetranitrate, more commonly known and more commonly pronounced as PETN. In 2010, 2 bombs concealed like this in printer cartridges were mailed from a UPS and FedEx office in Yemen to addresses in Chicago. The packages traveled through 4 different countries and at least 4 different planes, 2 of which were carrying passengers, before they were intercepted in Britain and Dubai following a tip from Saudi Arabia's intelligence service. So that was in 2010. That was an interrupted plot. We are now being told by the government that Anwar al-Awlaki, an American cleric who was also a leader in al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, not only helped plan and oversee that plot to detonate the printer cartridge bombs on board those 2 U.S.-bound cargo planes, he was also, they say, directly involved in the details of its execution. The government now says he took part directly in even the development and testing of the explosives that were placed on the planes. And while we're on the subject, in 2009, a Nigerian businessman walked into the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria. He said he was concerned about his son. He said his son was being radicalized. At the time, U.S. intelligence officials deemed this concern over his son's radicalization to be insufficient to pursue at the moment. They did add the young man's name to 500,000 other names in a computer database, but for the most part, the tip was sort of forgotten until a month later in December 2009 when Umar Farouk Abdul-Muttalib boarded a Northwest Airlines passenger jet going from Nigeria to Detroit, and he had about 80 grams of that same kind of explosive material, PETN, hidden in his underwear. And now, more information. Now the government is saying that the underwear bomber and Anwar al-Awlaki, same guy, were introduced through text message, that Mr. al-Awlaki hosted the underwear bomber in his house for 3 days before the kid went on to an al-Qaeda training camp. We're also being told that Mr. al-Awlaki planned the suicide operation for the underwear bomber in detail and helped him draft a statement read in a martyrdom video that would be shown after the attack. We are told that al-Awlaki directed the underwear bomber to take down that U.S. plane, that his last instructions to him were to make sure he blew it up when it was over American soil. All of these new disclosures about Anwar al-Awlaki came in a letter yesterday that was sent by the Attorney General to members of Congress. The same points were reiterated by President Obama in his big speech today. Basically, all of these new allegations against this American citizen who was killed are part of an argument by the administration that it was okay to kill him. It's an argument that this U.S. citizen was not targeted for death and ultimately killed by his own government without a trial because of his preaching or because of his beliefs or even because of his membership in an organization with whom we have declared ourselves to be at war. President Obama made the case today that Anwar al-Awlaki was killed because of what he was doing, because he said he was working all the time to kill people.
But when a U.S. citizen goes abroad to wage war against America and is actively plotting to kill U.S. citizens, and when neither the United States nor our partners are in a position to capture him before he carries out a plot, his citizenship should no more serve as a shield than a sniper shooting down on an innocent crowd should be protected from a SWAT team. That's who Anwar al-Awlaki was. He was continuously trying to kill people.
These new factual allegations about what al-Awlaki did are part of the case the government is now making for why it was okay to kill him. Are these new factual allegations true? Joining us now is Jeremy Scahill, national security correspondent for The Nation magazine and author of The New Doorstop that is available at your local bookshop. The book is called Dirty Wars: The World is a Battlefield. He's also the filmmaker of a new documentary called Dirty Wars, which explores America's covert wars across the globe. It's going to premiere in select cities across the country June 7th. Jeremy, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So those factual allegations are part of an important political argument about why that targeted killing was okay. What do you make of those factual allegations?
Right, I found it was really interesting today because the president also said that if he had the opportunity, he would have detained and prosecuted Anwar al-Awlaki. And if that's true, why didn't they seek an indictment against him? If they have all of this evidence, why not bring it into a court of law? Why not get an indictment, seek his extradition, and then if you can't get his extradition, well, then you have all sorts of options available to you. But they didn't even try. So none of the allegations against al-Awlaki have been proven. They haven't produced any evidence except for declarations from the Attorney General and now assertions from the president. For much of the past 600 days, and al-Awlaki died 600 days ago, his case has been litigated posthumously through leaks from the administration. I'm willing to concede maybe everything they say is true about Anwar al-Awlaki. For me, it's not about who Anwar al-Awlaki is. It's about who are we as a society. How we treat the most reprehensible of our citizens says a lot about who we are. So if we had that evidence against him, what was so dangerous that we couldn't seek an indictment and uphold the rule of law? And I should say, almost no one ever talks about this, the first time that we know that the U.S. tried to kill Anwar al-Awlaki was before the underwear bomb plot, before any of the allegations that President Obama made today. They tried to kill Anwar al-Awlaki on December 24th, 2009. This is before any of this had taken place, before any of the things in the Attorney General's letter. Having
been to Yemen and having spent time with the al-Awlaki family, a lot of which is documented in the film, which is amazing, do you think it is feasible that had an indictment and extradition proceedings been initiated, that would have been a way to catch him?
You know, it's interesting. Anwar al-Awlaki was in prison in Yemen for 18 months, in part at the request of the United States government. John Negroponte was involved with facilitating his imprisonment and actually said, we want al-Awlaki kept in this Yemeni prison for 4 or 5 years so that young Muslims stop being influenced by him around the world. Eventually, the Yemeni president was put under pressure and had to let him go. I think that there are numerous cases where we have killed people in Yemen where they could have been handed over to the United States if we had negotiated with their tribes. In the case of al-Awlaki, I don't know. They had tried to kill him so many times that I think he was so deep underground that it would have been very difficult to apprehend him. But I don't know that we ever actually tried. The tribal leaders from his region told me that they had repeatedly told the Yemeni president, if you present us with evidence that he is guilty of any of these crimes, we'll execute him ourselves. The head of the Awlak tribe, Sheikh Salih bin Farid, told me that he told a liaison with the United States government, if you show us the evidence, we will execute him ourselves.
The al-Awlaki son revelation yesterday from Attorney General Eric Holder. It had been known that al-Awlaki's son was killed by a U.S. drone strike. The U.S. finally admitted to it yesterday, but said that it was not a specific targeting, effectively admitting that it was an accident. How does that affect the ongoing case there and the family's relationship with that case?
I mean, first of all, what I find amazing, I mean, your previous guest, Robert Gibbs, had said when he asked about Abdulrahman al-Awlaki's killing, he said that he should have had a more responsible father. Harry Reid said that not only Anwar al-Awlaki and Samir Khan, the 2 men that were killed on September 30th, 2011, but Abdulrahman al-Awlaki said if there were 3 Americans that deserved to be killed, it was those 3 Americans. And I tried to get him to clarify, do you actually mean this 16-year-old kid? There is not a shred of evidence. I got to know this family so well. Not a single member of that family is like Anwar al-Awlaki. His son was not Anwar al-Awlaki. And for someone like Gibbs to say that, or Harry Reid to say that, without putting forth evidence, it implies that the kid did something wrong. This was a normal, goofy kid into comic books, Facebook, hanging out with friends, had no relationship whatsoever to terrorism.
Does the admission, though, that he was not killed on purpose affect how the family is going to proceed in terms of their relationship with the U.S. government, getting recourse?
Well, I mean, you know, if we're doing these strikes and we say that they're targeted strikes and we have satellite information, we should have known that there were a group of teenagers sitting there having dinner. That's one part of it. But the other is, I find that phrase, and I watched your interview with Jay Johnson yesterday and found it fascinating, where he wouldn't quite say it was accidental, and they use this not specifically targeted. Perhaps it was a signature strike where they're going after a group of military-aged males and they're hitting them. Maybe there was someone nearby that they had been tracking, or had been in a mosque that someone they were tracking was. To me, it just opens the door to all sorts of theories. When you kill the father and then the son 2 weeks later, I think the looming question is, how could this have happened? When I talked to a former senior administration official who was in on this process, he said that John Brennan, when he was the senior advisor on Homeland Security and counterterrorism, actually believed it may have been a direct hit. That he couldn't believe that it was a coincidence and ordered a review. When I called the White House to ask about that review, they said they wouldn't comment on it, and then sent me their boilerplate statement that they send to all of us when we inquire about drone strikes. So to me, how that kid was killed says a lot about who we are as a society. I think that family is owed an explanation, and I think the American people are owed an explanation.
Jeremy Scahill, national security correspondent for The Nation magazine, author of Dirty Wars and the forthcoming documentary of the same name. Jeremy, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks. All right, we'll be right back.